Since we last talked, things have gone so differently in the Twin Cities. Regular listeners will remember that back in October, it was just a few months ago, I teamed up and did an episode with the podcast producer from the University of Minnesota's student newspaper, CC Heinen. For that episode, we set up a table on campus and asked students about their feelings around AI and how they used it. Now, with everything going on in the last couple of weeks here in the Twin Cities, I have been wondering how CC's doing and how things are going at that student paper, the Minnesota Daily.
We had a big meeting where we kind of had professionals come in and talk to us about, all of them basically just saying, we've never seen anything like this before. Everything that you guys are experiencing right now is totally singular and completely historic. And these were journalists who've been journalists for their entire lives. And so that was crazy in itself.
Of course, you've seen the headlines, you've seen the video reports from the Twin Cities. I live in St. Paul. So the ICE surge, the killing of Renee Good and Alex Preddy by federal agents, and the groundswell of protest and community activism is unlike anything I've ever seen as well. And it means the student newspaper has actually been stocking up on supplies they never thought they'd need.
The people who run the Daily have been buying gas masks, better, higher quality press vests that have a bulletproof front piece.
Yeah. Wow.
Bigger press passes.
Bulletproof vests to be a student journalist.
Yeah. It's insane. I also just am all of us are under the age of 22, and it's now we're going out there wearing a bulletproof vest and a gas mask. What is this? I don't know. That has been definitely a surreal thing, and just a very scary thing too, being an editor, having reporters that kind of, report to me, having reporters who maybe want to go out in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And then me knowing God forbid anything happens to them, that guilt on me is going to be insane.
Welcome to Learning Curve, where we explore how education is adapting to the rise of generative AI. I'm Jeff Young. For this episode, I'm going to try to see what we can learn from CC and from other student journalists that are trying to tell the story of what's happening in Minneapolis. And I'll talk to a professor here who's also trying to understand all this as she teaches these students. Of course, I'm curious about how AI is playing a role in this tense and unfolding story, specifically how it's contributing to misinformation online these days. What can educators do to prepare students and any of us for this new information landscape where AI is increasingly a factor? Before getting to the AI, though, I feel it's important to set the stage and to hear what these student journalists are going through in Minneapolis. So earlier today, the same day I'm releasing this, it's Tuesday, February 3rd, I drove over to the University of Minnesota's campus and sat down with students and a professor. First, with the new multimedia editor of the Minnesota Daily, Hannah Reynolds, who is a senior at the university who's majoring in journalism. Okay, walk us through what I will put on the show notes some of the great work that the Minnesota Daily student newspaper is doing. Yeah. I was going through it myself. Yeah. But tell us about some of the images that we'd see, that listeners will see when they go there, that your student journalists and you have been documenting.
Yeah. No, I'm super proud. It was my first week on the job when all this stuff happened this last week. And so it was definitely kind of a birth by fire situation. But I was super proud of the photo and video desks at the Daily because we were able to go out on Friday the 23rd when the big protest and economic blackout happened, and we were able to do a lot of documenting. And so we spent 5 hours participating in that and documenting it. And so a lot of the images, at least in the photo story we just published, are from that day. But then we were planning on publishing just that photo story about that protest, but then obviously the events of Saturday the next morning unfolded.
As you may have guessed, that event she's referring to on Saturday morning was the killing by ICE agents of Alex Preddy, a 37-year-old intensive care nurse who was holding a cell phone, who was pepper sprayed, pinned to the ground, and then shot and killed by agents, as several bystanders captured the video of the scene from multiple angles. Trump administration officials quickly labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist and said he was endangering the officers. But as a New York Times news analysis recently put it, the shooting turned into a turning point in public sentiment, as many who watched the video perceived it as an execution rather than something that looked like standard law enforcement procedure.
Yeah. And so I woke up to about 80 messages on my phone, and we just immediately, started working together and figuring out who can get there first and start, taking photos. And it was a collaborative effort. I was able to, try to go and get as close as I could to, start documenting and taking photos myself. And then photographers on my desk, including people on the video desk, went out later to the vigils. They went to the actual street where Alex Preddy was shot and killed, and documented the community response that evening. And then, another photographer went to Whittier Park, where there over 1,000 people ended up showing up that night. And so it was just really a powerful kind of transference between Friday and Saturday, where you saw all these people come together, and then on Saturday, the whole city was kind of thrown into grief again. And I think that to document that transition and how that change over the span of 24 hours was really crazy for us to experience, but also I think it was very important that we just pushed through and we did our best to document as much of it as we could.
Yeah. So this coming together. So Renee Good was killed, and these protests were sparked.
Yeah.
This Friday was really describe what the mood there was. It was more like people coming together in a kind of feeling of unity, do you mean? Or?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of hopeful energy. A lot of people coming, like just the sheer number too that showed up in sub-zero temperatures. I have to preface, it was cold.
Right. I mean, we're talking like more than like double digits negative.
Correct. Like -40 with wind chill. Like it was brutal. And so, but people showed up anyway. And like the amount of people that were undeterred to be there, I think was really, something that we tried to capture in all the images that we took, because there was just still this ferocity and this energy that you just couldn't not see it when you were standing there with all these people. And then again, the sheer number of people, over 50,000 people showed up. And I know that another march happened again this past Friday, and I'm not sure what the number is there, but people continue to show up. And I think that kind of speaks to the community response that has happened in Minnesota, which is very unique compared to other states. And I think that's been widely documented as well, just the sheer number of people that are coming together with their neighbors to try to say, hey, we're not okay with what's happening. And so that was really just, it was in the air. Like you could just feel it.
I understand that you are attending safety trainings and your staff.
Yeah. So funny enough, I think it was, the dates are kind of messed up in my head, but I was able to attend a safety training at the Star Tribune. We were, a couple of student spots were, we were allowed in, and to go and take part in this basically condensed version of like a HEFAT training. And
that stands for, I mean, sort of like war photography.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't even, I actually can't recall off the top of my head what it stands for, but it's basically emergency medical training. They're giving you the basics of like, if somebody's injured and bleeding, how can you help them? How can you potentially save a life if you're a photographer in that situation? Which is something that I really, I didn't imagine myself learning. Maybe that's naive of me not to think that would be necessary, but it just wasn't something that was even remotely on my radar, that I would have to learn how to, potentially, patch a bullet wound, or, how to put a tourniquet on, and these skills that I never, I didn't have any knowledge base for before. But I'm really glad that I know now, because we are seeing that, just like how there's an increase in violence that's happening in the streets of Minneapolis, the reporters have also been, hurt and injured in the process as well. It's not just community members that are being affected and impacted, during these community responses to ICE presence, but it's also the reporters that are going out that are being, put in dangerous situations. And so it's critical that like the education is being passed around to not, just the professionals in the industry, but the people that are, like I'm graduating this year. It's critical that we know this, as students, because we're right there too, and we're trying to do, that job as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to believe. I mean, it makes sense. You wouldn't expect it. I mean, you're literally in this, beautiful urban campus in Minneapolis. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just wild.
Well, I mean, hang in there. It's exciting to see this work. I
Thanks.
mean, it's very impressive.
I think that's like the thing. It's like what's happening is very tragic and very sad. But the response on our desk has been, how are we going to tackle this and do our jobs? And it's been motivating to go out and do this work because we know that it matters. And even as a student publication, I think that has been a good point of just, we can do this if we work together. And it's really strengthened kind of all of our mentalities around what's going on because we just feel the camaraderie in the newsroom a lot more. And I think that's a positive too. We know that what we're doing and we're coming together to do is so, so important, again, even as a student organization on campus right now.
Though, like everyone here in the Twin Cities, I have been living and breathing this story. I certainly have not been in the heart of any ICE activity the way that Hannah has.
Yeah.
Is it scary?
It is. I think that I don't know. I'm one of these people that I think that I do well in the chaos. Like when something is chaotic, I get calm. And so for me, like I went out on Saturday. I tried to get to two other reporters that were there on the scene a couple hours after Alex Pretty was shot, and I was down the street. I couldn't get to them because the street had been blocked off at that point. And I was a block up from where they were dispersing the crowd and using tear gas, and that was like my first time being in that kind of environment. I know, after, leaving that situation, I'll never go into that again without a press vest or some of the proper things that you really do need to say that you're, a journalist in that situation. So it was a learning experience, but also it was interesting to, stand on the street and you're seeing all these people and all these things are happening and it's all happening very quickly. But like I stood there as, like the armored cars went up the street and this guy went and like one of the moments that just like will ever be burned into my brain, I think, is he went and stood right in front of one of the armored trucks and he didn't move. And they think that was such a crazy moment to watch because for like a split second, I really didn't know what was going to happen. And
were you taking pictures?
I am. Yeah. So, yeah. And so I was standing off to the side of the street. And again, no press vest because I didn't have one.
Yeah, because there wasn't the sense that this was going to keep happening.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And so I was standing there and I held my badge out in one hand, camera in the other, and I just took as many photos as I could. And the cars passed. But I mean, people were getting, pepper sprayed and tear gassed. And even, we saw video went viral of Care 11 reporter who, got punched in the face. And yeah, exactly. And so again, the violence towards reporters can't be understated too. So it's scary because there's an unpredictability there where you're going in and you don't know if your safety is going to be prioritized in that situation. So.
I have a feeling listeners might be afraid for you as you describe this. I'm glad. It sounds like, I talked to CC, like I said, and it sounds like there is more safety gear on hand so you're equipping up for your photographers.
We are. Yeah. Like we just invested in some pretty heavy-duty gas masks for people, not just the ones you can get at Home Depot, but, the nice ones with the good filters. And we're really just not taking it lightly. And
you're not backing down.
No. And I think that we wouldn't want to. I think every reporter that I've talked to, we're all just really, really determined to document what's happening right now because who else is going to do that this close to campus, right? We have the newspapers in Minnesota are documenting broadly what's going on everywhere, but we're covering this community right here, right? And there's things happening. ICE has been on campus. There have been, students that have, been detained or, confronted by different agents, and, they deserve to know what's going on too. And if we're going to be their information source, we need to be as on the nose as possible. And so that's why everybody's, really just working in overtime and just trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide people with information. I think that's our goal, whether that's through visuals, the video, or, just through our editorial desks. So
how is AI playing a role in this story? And what can we learn about information literacy in the age of AI from what's unfolding in Minneapolis? I'm going to come back to Hannah for her thoughts on those questions in a few minutes. But while I was on campus, I also sat down with one of Hannah's professors in the journalism school, Regina McCombs, a senior lecturer and a senior fellow in visual communication and photojournalism. I started by asking Regina to sum up how she talks about AI and misinformation in the courses that she's teaching these days on visual journalism, as well as ones on video and audio.
The generative AI tools that have come along really just the last couple of years have gotten so much better that we used to have sort of all these little tips and tricks for spotting AI, right? Look at how many fingers they had. Look and see if, both their ears looked the same. Sort of really simple things that you could look at and say, oh, that's AI. And now it's much more difficult. And you can't necessarily just glance at a photo and say, oh, that's AI. There are still some things that help you figure that out, but we're talking more and more about really thinking about an image when we look at it and evaluating it sort of in a big picture sense. Does this make sense? Is this logical? Is this likely? Does it confirm something I already believe, so I want to believe it? There's just all kinds of sort of bigger picture things we think about as we're evaluating whether something has been created by AI.
Wow. So just to underline that, so in other words, this shift of most things were real. And so you could sort of look for these tells that were actually not that hard if you spend a second to, okay, you're not going to necessarily be able to, as a human, do a detection of AI versus human. So you need to bring in your own thinking about what am I seeing? The context,
Yeah, it really calls on far more critical thinking skills of all of us. And that sort of taking a beat, which I worry about because so many of our feeds just fly by, right? You just scroll on by and you don't have the time or take the time to sort of stop and say true or false, right? Or manipulated or not manipulated, because sometimes it's kind of partially true. And that takes a lot of work. And so we talk about this idea of, how much time do you spend on these things and how much time can you spend evaluating these things? So it's a big process now to go through all that.
And she says things are reaching the point where it might be too much to ask a typical person.
Some of it's no longer consumer processable, right? We have more and more journalistic forensic teams that are really sort of spending time looking at evaluating the source and whether it's been manipulated, and there are some tools, but they are imperfect tools. And
even for the experts.
Right. And, they may come up with something that says 80% chance that it's AI. Well, okay, but that's still a 20% chance that it's not. And so it takes processing on multiple levels sometimes. And my concern is, how do we expect somebody going through their day to sort of make those calls on a regular basis?
Yeah, I kind of worry. There's this push for AI literacy, and there's been a long, move for just information literacy as a part of what colleges and schools would teach. I wonder if these tools have reached a point where it's almost like beyond the standard strategy, right? The playbook of what you and others in education have been doing.
I think it is. There are still some tells,
sure,
but now it's kind of the point of, do they look too perfect? Are their physiques over the top, idealized? Is their hair flawless? It's more sort of, are things too perfect rather than...
Are there 5 fingers?
Are there 5 fingers?
Yeah. And what is that? I mean, what are the implications? I mean, we have it playing out here in the Twin Cities. The campus is in Minneapolis. We're sitting here now. What are the implications? Where are some examples, even in the last couple weeks, with the ice surge of what we're talking about, or the possibilities with AI?
I think maybe one of the best known right now is a picture that was supposedly AI enhanced that alleges to show Alex Preddy with a gun in his hand, when in fact it was a screenshot from a video that pretty clearly shows, if you play the whole video, that it was indeed a phone. And all the other videos support that as well. There is no video that shows him with a gun in his hand. But someone took this photo and, sharpened it, basically, and it, makes it look more like there is a gun in his hand. And this has got a lot of play in some circles that he was actually really carrying a gun. And that sort of implies that it was a justified shooting in some way.
These feeds, I don't know what other people are seeing. I see in my own feeds, if I'm swiping on like Reels or something, all I see are things that kind of confirm, the news media I'm seeing and the accounts that have been proven true. But I'm not seeing these other videos you mentioned where it's been enhanced to look like Preddy was holding a gun. But I have read and believe that these are getting to show. I've seen the image on a news feed or like a news article about this trend. I guess that's the other thing, is it feels like these algorithms are built to divide. And I know that a long time ago there was this idea of filter bubble, which seemed kind of novel at some point, but now it just feels very true. And we don't know what other people are seeing.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the algorithms are such that if you click on anything, right, you get more and more and more and more of that.
Yes, so that's right. So it sort of assumes if you watched it, then you must like it, and we'll give you more of that.
Right. Which is one of the reasons I've been a little tentative to sort of look at more of these clearly manipulated things, because I don't want more of them in my feed.
Interesting.
And I've toyed with the idea of creating, some kind of throwaway accounts that I could spend more time looking at some of these things, because I do think a lot of this stuff just never comes across my feed because it's not what I look at, and they give me more and more and more of the things that I do consume.
So you can't even try to perform this public service of putting out an article or a blog post or something that would say, like, this is wrong or this has been proven false, because you don't know what it is that is being shown to groups of people.
Right. And plenty of serious researchers out there are doing this,
For
right?
sure.
But
Right.
they're sort of deep into the research and study of it. And for me, it's more like influencing my teaching and work here rather than a deep research. So God bless those folks that they're,
trying to hit the real-time corrections and then fact-checking.
Yeah, and really seeing what's being spread across the spectrum of beliefs.
Honestly, what can, educators do to, both in journalism and even beyond, like to prepare students for this world that has so much AI in it all of a sudden?
I think those, critical thinking skills have never been more important than they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Getting our students to pause
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even step back from some of their consumption. I think talking about the algorithms, and it's not just the algorithms in what we see, but even in the content creation, what's in the algorithms, we find bias in the algorithms. If I ask AI to show me a picture of a happy family, odds are massive that's going to be a white and blonde family.
Mm.
Just because of kind of what's in the system, how the algorithms work. There's all kinds of bias toward the beautiful, right? There have been some really interesting studies about, people asking for an average-looking person, and that average-looking person looks like a model.
It's like Hollywood casting.
Yeah, exactly. And the ugly person is either, approaching average, or they are ridiculously over the top, like, again, Hollywood hag kind of thing, So there's, even in the sort of creation tools, there's all kinds of bias in the algorithm. So that's a piece we have to talk about with our students, because some of them will use AI to create materials, right? There are times that they may need to do that, and they need to understand that element of it as well.
After all, many fields outside of journalism are quickly adopting AI tools. like marketing and lots of parts of corporate America. And in journalism, recent studies show that audiences want disclosures when AI is used, but that they trust sources less when they hear AI is involved. One unusual aspect of the Trump administration is its embrace of AI-generated memes, fanciful images and videos that are created by bots. These aren't meant to fool anybody, but they're often making aggressive jokes or glorifying a certain narrative. This Trump administration has been very keen to embrace AI-enhanced images, even before the ICE surge. So, these are on actual, Trump tweeting on his Truth Social or wherever he puts materials, or people in the administration, high up in the administration, like cabinet secretaries, putting out AI manipulated images, some of which are not necessarily, interestingly, not like necessarily like trying to trick you into thinking something's real. Could you talk a little bit about this kind of meme use, which involves generative AI by the administration in the last year or so, or leading up to now?
Yeah, I mean, they aren't hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
Right. We're not giving away a secret here. Right.
Correct. I mean, they've clearly said, yes, we're doing it. It's memes. We love it. We're going to keep doing it.
Give it a couple examples for those who haven't been paying attention.
Well, I mean, it was hard to miss the Trump in a firefighting jet, as a jet firefighter, I mean.
So this AI-generated video, which I will put a link to in the show notes, shows Trump's head inside a fighter plane that has King Trump written on it. And you hear the sounds of a song from Top Gun as Trump flies the plane over a large No Kings protest and drops some sort of brown, gross liquid on the crowd below.
It's all of these things that sort of really make him look muscular and large and tough or friendly or whatever that particular meme is. And while they're not pretending it's true, they still, I think, have an impact in either making you cheer for that, jet pilot or, roll your eyes, whatever it might be. It's fascinating to me, and it's everywhere. Given my own personal belief about the use of AI, I find it distressing that this is coming from our highest level of government with kind of no apology.
Well, what is the potential impact of these images? Other than, in a way, what I'm hearing a little bit is like, even though it's not true, you might, especially if you sort of are prone to like the narrative, it sort of makes you feel good, potentially, as that, if somebody is pro-Trump. But what are the implications for information literacy here as far as, and misinformation with these uses?
One of the interesting things I saw last year, there was a study that came out of the pictures that were coming out of Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
And what it found was that there were obviously a few AI-generated images that kind of became memes around what was happening in Gaza. But they found that the vast majority were realistic images, were actual images that had been taken of what was happening there. People were less likely to believe them just because the potential for the AI images existed or because they had seen an AI image related to it. So they tended to doubt all of the images. And if you think about that, that's pretty disturbing because, photos have always been able to be manipulated, but it usually took a lot of work. It took some skill or time. But photos have been kind of proof, right? Photos and video both have kind of been proof that something happened or didn't happen, as the case may be, with Alex Pretty's gun. And if nobody believes anything anymore, where does that leave us? I don't know. How do we get to the truth if nobody will believe the photos and video because they could have been manipulated? And they could have.
And it's a tenet, right, of photojournalism that, and the movement right now to be on the streets in the Twin Cities observing with your camera phone, and the governor saying, go out and get, do video because that could prove, in case there's some lie or manipulation.
Right. And it's just been the sort of sheer volume of these videos that have sort of proved them, right? Because you have them from a dozen different angles and they're all showing the same thing. That gives you that kind of level of proof. But it used to be kind of one video would have been enough. Now you need so many more to sort of say, yeah, this is what actually happened.
It seems like that's the big change just that has happened with the ICE surge and the images that have come out of these killings of Good and Preddy. Like that the fact that there were multiple angles has been the reason I think a lot of people are maybe seeing it. And this AI narrative, I feel like, has been mostly discredited. I don't know how you see it.
No, I agree. I think that largely, except for, sort of some very small filter bubbles, those things have been discredited. But not every situation is going to have those multiple angles, right? Not every incident in the future is going to have 20 photographers standing there. So does that mean we no longer believe it unless there's multiple angles and things? I don't know. There are some technological things coming along. There's something called content credentials that a lot of companies are sort of working together to develop. It's probably several years down the road, and the idea of that is it will just tell you what has been done to an image. It won't say that it's not AI manipulated, but it will say you can look at every step along the way.
Almost like a Google Doc version history or something.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And that's great, but again, is everyone going to want to click on that little icon and look through it to see? I think it's asking a lot of people on their social feeds to stop, look at the version history, see what's been done to it, and take that. So sure, there will be some images that will be great to be able to say, look, we could show you exactly what's been done to this image. It was taken in a camera that's got this certification in it. It was moved into Photoshop and, corrected in these ways. And
use this AI tool in Photoshop.
Yeah. Or didn't use any AI tools in Photoshop.
Sure.
And then you'll be able to say, okay, good. That is all well within the parameters of great journalism, and that's an image we can trust. Whether the public will want to even do that, I don't know. It'll be great for editors, right? People working with user-generated content and submitting it, or even freelancers they haven't worked with before. They'll be able to look at the metadata and say, okay, it's legit.
Right.
So
it's like send it back to the lab. I'm just picturing, it's like, but it doesn't match the pace of news consumers. But it could still be great for the New York Times has analyzed this image, or Fox News has analyzed this image, whatever it is.
Yeah. So it's definitely going to have benefit when it sort of gets all developed. But it takes this level of coordination with the camera manufacturers and the software developers, and then the people who create and edit and all of that. So it's complicated, and I suspect it's many years out yet before it's going to be a true standard.
I asked Regina what it feels like to be teaching through this turbulent moment.
It's complicated. Everyone's life here right now is complicated. Students are reacting in various ways, right? Some of them are afraid. Some of them are energized. So that's been a piece of it, sort of figuring out what is it safe for us to ask our students to do right now, because we've seen this can be very dangerous. So we've had to sort of develop safety guidelines for our students if they are choosing to go out in the field. So one of the things we've said is no assignments will require a student to go out and cover a protest or a vigil or an ICE confrontation.
These are all assignments that would be very natural in the past, or at least within the bounds.
Right. Certainly a march or a vigil would have been like, yeah, go to this, thing, and that'd be a great assignment. But now it's just, do you put a 20-year-old in a position of sort of having to make split-second decisions that could impact their lives permanently? We, just said, not unless they've made an educated choice themselves. And then we've laid out some pretty strict guidelines if they do decide to go. They have to take someone with them. They have to make sure someone knows when they're supposed to be back. They have to have phone numbers with them. They have to, sort of do all of these kinds of safety things that professional journalists are doing as well. And we are trying to get them the same kind of training that professional journalists are getting right now. There's something called hostile environment and first aid training, HEFAT training, that a lot of the journalists in town are going through. And we're trying to get some of our students through that, the ones that are eager to be out, and our students at the Minnesota Daily, the student newspaper. So it's just, the level of complexity has gone up this semester, that's for sure.
After the break, more from the student journalists here, especially on how they see AI and its role in today's news landscape. Stay with us. This week, I am using the ad spot to just encourage you to subscribe to the Learning Curve podcast if you don't already, and share it with a friend. I hope you're enjoying the original reporting and the timely stories we're telling about AI, how it's changing education, and you can help the show grow. I also just want to thank you for listening. So what do students think about AI's influence on how news is spreading these days? I asked Hannah Reynolds, the student multimedia editor that we heard from earlier, and she had a pretty stark take.
I would say that I think AI is going to be our next biggest battle when it comes to misinformation. And I think that we're not fully prepared for just how confusing it can make things. And it's already doing that, right? There was a woman who was arrested. I jotted her name down, Nikema Levy Armstrong. And the White House posted a photo of a digitally altered picture of her when she was arrested. And that picture's been passed around and, reposted. And they're like, oh, look at, she's sobbing and she's crying. It's like, this is this image that they've built, and it was fake. It wasn't real. The real photo is, when she's arrested, her face is, she's not crying, and her skin tone was darkened in that AI generated image. And so,
yeah, I will put this in the show notes. And it sounds like Chrissy Noem had previously shared out the undoctored image.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just confusing. And so, I think of my grandparents who, and I was talking to my roommate about this last night, while we might be able to, and this is changing too because it's getting better, but while we may be able to still, detect when AI is being used.
We being a young person who's steeped in this.
Potentially, right. It's like there's telltale signs that an image has been, doctored or that it's been, through an AI system, but that's changing. It's actually the fact that I've been tricked multiple times by AI pictures, and I feel like I'm pretty good at sussing out an AI image, when I'm looking at it on social media. That's scaring me because I'm becoming less likely to be able to know if it's AI altered. But then there's also the flip side of all of this where, depending on the political party that, these issues are, coming across on. I know there was a lot of people that were like, oh, the shooting of Alex Preddy was AI. Or they're saying that that wasn't real. So I think it's going to honestly be the next biggest thing where in an almost Orwellian fashion, it's going to be the thing that says, oh, you're not seeing what you think you see. And I think that that's very scary because if we can no longer trust, the visuals that are coming across our news feed or, in our hands, that's scary. And we need to be able to trust the information that's being captured, and citizen journalism is so important right now. But if it's being doctored or, people are using it and reposting it in a negative way, then that's kind of something we have to contend with.
And she says her overall view on AI has also soured.
I have been somebody that at first was very enamored by AI and the use of it, right? I was like, oh, this fun new tool. I have since severed any, AI, platforms that I had previously used. I've stopped using them because I've really realized how corrosive they were even for me.
How so?
I think that as a student, I think it's dangerous how ChatGPT specifically as a platform has become something that students can rely on, because even as a student graduating right now, I've seen just how much of, classroom conversations to the work being submitted is, potentially not even people's genuine thought or feeling. And I think that that's scary, because we want to be able to have conversations where you're actually talking about what you believe in, not what the ChatGPT robot told you to think, and put in your discussion posts. I've literally written discussion posts in class, and the responses to my discussion posts in class have been AI generated. It's just discouraging, because these are, it's like these are going to be my colleagues, in the workforce one day. And I don't really want to be working in a workforce that's saturated in AI generated content. And also it's like ChatGPT, it says in the bottom in this very teeny little fine print, it will lie to you. It'll tell you what you want to hear. And so I absolutely think people should be scared of that, because we should not want that. We should not want a system that's just going to tell us what we want to hear.
There was one other thing I was really curious to ask about, which is how students get their news these days, and how much of it comes from social media platforms rather than, say, going to a news site. That was one question I asked another student journalist, Leslie Blees, who is a second year at the University of Minnesota, and she is a photojournalist for the student paper.
I haven't been consuming too much on social media. I try and stay off of it because I have never been a big fan of social media to begin with. I just haven't. And I really try not to go on it too much.
So you're not swiping for your latest glimpse into what's going on in the world?
I did at the very beginning of everything that was happening with ICE. And then I just got overwhelmed and, frustrated, because there was a lot of opinions also, not just news. And I didn't want to hear the opinions. I wanted to hear what was happening.
You wanted to kind of control what you were seeing and who's saying what to you as you learned things.
Yeah, I needed to protect my mental well-being. I needed to understand what was happening and get a feel and understand what was happening, but I couldn't let it absolutely take over and see all of these, these people who are sad. And I mean, I'm sad, but I need a space to step away and remember or take care of myself.
I'm curious about this, actually. You see your peers get their news from various places. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's a hard sell these days to get them to go to the Minnesota Daily, say, or other news out, as far as the folks around you, that you see in their habits of getting information?
I do think it's a hard sell. I think it's a hard sell because it's really easy to consume your news on social media.
Just to swipe through, one of these, TikTok or Reels or Instagram.
Yeah. And it's really easily digestible on, it's a video or, it's, they are videos,
Right.
Videos.
And you don't have to type anything in, and it's just kind of an experience.
You don't have to go specifically searching for it. It's just pops up on your feed and it's right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like people are getting their news? That is the way people are getting their news, just through, and this event is being shaped by what's on these platforms, it sounds like.
I do think that people my age consume their news from social media platforms. And maybe it's not TikTok or Instagram. Maybe it's YouTube,
Sure.
I don't know. Do you consider YouTube?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of these
social platform? Yeah. I mean, maybe it's, a little bit longer form content on a YouTube video. But I think a lot of people my age consume their news that way.
Mm-hmm. They're not going to a brand of the New York Times or anywhere.
No, before I started journalism, I didn't consume my news from KSTP or KARE 11 or WCCO or the Star Tribune, because it was
outlets here,
that are wonderful. Now the reason I do is because I've been taught.
Sure.
It's there's a reason I do, because it's trust. I trust it. I've looked into it. I've met the people. That it's another reason. I'm
this is the field you want to go into, it sounds like. Yeah.
But before this, much easier to consume my news on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I think a lot of people want it the easy way right now. And it's definitely easy for me to go on social media to find that news, but I trust it more on other sites that are the local, you know.
Hannah, the student we heard from earlier, agreed that it can be hard to convince classmates to read the Minnesota Daily's articles these days, or pretty much any news article.
I think that it is because and I don't like saying that. Like, I wish that it was something where, social media wasn't a primary news source, but for a lot of people it is. Now today, like when you ask people, where do you see your news? Oh, Instagram, TikTok. And I think that, I think we really have to question ourselves on that a little bit because, again, it's not a verified news source. Instagram, anything that you're seeing on there, it's basically, we've talked about this. I've talked about this with friends. We're kind of in this saturated opinion culture right now where it's everybody has a podcast, for example, or you know what I mean? And it's, everybody wants to tell you what they believe, but for example, it's Joe Rogan isn't exactly telling you the news. He's telling you what he believes as a person and individual, or any of these other, big podcasts that are, that have entered the political sphere. They're telling you what they think. They're not telling you necessarily all the facts and the context and the information that traditional news media works hard to provide. So I think that is potentially, a really negative turn that that's kind of taken over my generation. But I was raised, by, a dad who had cable news running in the background. So I still, I'll watch, MSNBC occasionally, but I do really not, I mostly just, go off of news on, I'll follow the New York Times on Instagram, right? I'll follow, that is a way that I am seeing news firsthand, and I'm often seeing it first there as opposed to, getting news notifications on my phone. So it's the expediency is a good thing, but I think that we have to be careful because influencers are not journalists. And I think that there's a lot of confusion as to who has the credentialing and the experience to tell you facts and not just bury you in, I believe this, I believe that, because you're not able to make up your own mind. I think that that's really unfortunate that a lot of people are just getting kind of immersed in, again, just a bunch of opinions, and then they're not able to ascertain what's factual versus just what some guy's thinking on a Thursday morning over a cup of coffee. If that makes any sense. That's just...
No, it sort of plays into the AI question, really,
Yeah.
is that there's been this muddling
Mhm.
of the trusted source.
Yeah.
And sometimes people trust these influencers just because they're used to them, they're following them, they feel connected to them, and podcasters and everything. And, the variation is huge on how ethical or truth-telling folks are.
Yeah. And I think that that's something interesting too, because is there something that can be learned by the personability and the way that news is being, shared on these platforms by, people that are even just trying to do citizen journalism, by mainstream networks? I think yes. I think that there is a lot that they can learn from, maybe how social media is changing, people's, daily life of how they're consuming news, right? It's a tool that even my teachers, Regina and Matt Jakovic, and different professors who I've had throughout the years, they've, all said the same thing. The industry is having to evolve and figure out how to reach more people, because that is the platform that, a ton of people exist on now.
That's where people are
finding information.
And so I'm sure the student paper is doing it too.
Yeah, no, and we really tried to do that the last 2 weeks. We've been really trying to beef up getting video content on social media.
As I sat down with all these folks, I made sure to ask how they're doing, because these last few weeks really have felt unprecedented and hard.
How are you holding up?
Yeah, that's the question that I've been getting a lot this last 2 weeks. Is from everybody, from friends, from family, from people that I work with. And I think that the response I've given to a lot of people is I'm still processing it. I think it's hard to pin down exactly how I'm feeling, because we're kind of working to do a job while all of this crazy stuff is happening. And so it's difficult to, I think, compartmentalize sometimes the emotions that you're feeling and going through while also trying to do a professional job. And in this case, tell the stories of people that are being impacted by, what's going on. And so I'm still processing. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, you're basically carrying, living it, and also trying to, like you said, being a professional, use your skills and try to tell this story that you're uniquely positioned to tell, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think it's been interesting too because we're surrounded by professionals who've been in the industry, in the journalism industry for a couple of decades, and they're looking at us and they're saying this is unprecedented, to use an overused term, but like it's crazy and it's wild what's happening right now, and at least we don't feel so alone when they're saying that what you're dealing with is so unique and unusual that they're even they're like, we don't even know how to fully, get a grip on it and come to terms with what's happening too. So, yeah.
This has been Learning Curve. This episode was put together by me, Jeff Young. This one was a bit of a sprint to put together, but I am excited to try to share this in a timely way. Again, please support the show by telling a friend about the podcast or leaving a rating or review. Music this episode is by Komaku. And I used an AI tool, Midjourney, for the episode art. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, thanks for listening.